Hey, Jason.
Yes, Alex.
I'm just thinking. I got when you're a kid, and you're just so excited to get a snow cone.
Oh, yes.
I feel like I have one giant snow cone in front of me.
I know we got these little wind because we kept getting the like that. Yeah, when we talk, you could hear
Like
that,
a bad Nickelback song.
Yeah, Nickelback was like with your Affliction T-shirt.
Yeah,
I knew it was going downhill for Tiger Woods whenever they kept spotting him at Nickelback concerts. Like he was going to every single one.
yeah.
And I was like, it's not going well for you, bro. I mean, greatest golfer of all time.
Yeah, no,
You know,
yeah.
I mean,
most
our
definitely.
top three at least.
Yeah, no, but I'm just dying here because we got these wind blockers or whatever the heck you want to call them. These giant pieces of foam going over our microphones, and
Yeah,
it's just
so
like a
hopefully this will
giant
help.
snow cone.
Yeah, it does. It looks like
know?
it. Yeah,
It's
you want to put
really-
the syrup on there. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
syrup. Syrup.
It's really in my face.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I'm just gonna have to become numb to the fact that it's right here.
yeah. It's for helping our listeners because you have to have clean audio or
When
people tune you out.
Yeah, they'll tune us out. They won't resonate
Yes.
with what we're talking about.
Speaking of resonation,
Yeah, speaking of the resonation, the Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is that?
so Dr. Joe Dispenza has a retreat, and he does a lot of healing, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if you want to use those words. And the way that he does it is through science.
Yeah.
And he's kind of bridging this whole of understanding quantum physics and then understanding how that affects biology and it affects our meat suits.
Which is cool because we do spiritual teaching, and I mean the things that affect the spirit also affect physics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice we're in the same boat. He's teaching from a different angle, so it's interesting to share what he's talking about. He had a mistake in his article, and I will call him out on that because if you have a lot of people reading stuff, you got to make sure that one, it's the responsibility of Dr. Joe Dispenza in the article he publishes.
Right.
He screwed up the name of Luke Montoya. He spelled that wrong, and they also used the wrong type of brainwave state. But that's okay. But I'm just saying, and you also need to be responsible as a reader,
Right.
or even a listener to our show, to go do your own research.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't like when people start taking things as a gospel.
Yeah. No, knowledge takes work.
Yes.
Truth takes work.
Right.
And once you've worked them out and put them into practical experience, you find wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that scarlet thread that you find through all religions.
Yeah.
Or any type of spiritual teaching is getting into the
function
wisdom.
of that is to, like, these bands I'm wearing here, they've been on forever, but that red one is very important in a lot of cultures.
Right.
It's that unifying thread, right? It's in a circle. But Dr. Joe Dispenza was talking about the value in aligning yourself, like removing your distractions and zoning out in front of digital devices and taking the time to ground yourself in nature. And it's not just the sense of being outside that makes you feel better, but there's a physical thing that's happening with the earth and you being a part of it that gives you that refreshed feeling of life. And this thing that was, guy's name was like Otto von Schumann or something like that, some German dude, back in the day, recognized that there was a resonant frequency between the ionosphere and the Earth's crust. Right. So the Earth, we have our core, and it's a big, it's an iron-rich core, and there's magma, and it's moving around. So it's creating energy. It's pumping out electromagnetic frequencies. And if you go on the U.S. Geological Survey's website, they have a map of where high amounts of EMF or electromagnetism is being pumped out of the Earth's crust. So it's just happening all the time, and we're constantly inundated with it. But there's a frequency involved with anything that's in some sort of phase state. Like you and I thinking, our body moving, our cells, all that's at a certain frequency, like a vibration, just to make that simple. And so what Schumann had recognized is that the electromagnetic pulses that are coming out of the crust are smacking 140 miles up into the Earth's ionosphere. It's the top part of our atmosphere around Earth. And when it hits that, it's going to bounce back down. And the rate at which it's doing that is 7.83 hertz. And hertz is how many waveforms are happening within a certain period of time, right? Hertz is a definition of frequency. And the resonance is the strength of that. So those are the peaks in the waves. They measured that at 7.83 hertz, there sits a resonance that aligns with the life on this planet.
Right.
And things thrive off of that. So they wanted to test that. And the article talked about how
there was another scientist that came on the scene.
Yeah,
a little bit later.
Yeah, you have Dr. Luke Montoya that came on later, and they were running tests. And some of the tests were, we want to take a group of people and we want to stick them underground.
Right.
So they don't have the ability to receive the frequency that's coming out of the crust and smacking into the ionosphere and just bouncing back and forth. They weren't living in the vibrational state on the Earth's crust. And what he found is that the people became sick, depressed, the body became weak, all these different things from living underground.
Mm-hmm.
But when they brought in a device that artificially pumped out this frequency, that the frequency actually rid of the headaches, the weakness, the depression, just by having it there.
So they were still living underground. They just
still
put
living
the
underground,
7.83 out.
But they brought the 7.83 out, which is the thing that is the body's naturally attuned to.
Right.
So then that led to the obvious next step. So it's like, what is the effect of this frequency on a genetic level?
Yes.
So Dr. Luke Montoya did a test with DNA in test tubes, and to see what the effect of the test tube was when the frequency was applied to it. So they had the DNA in the tube, okay, as a base test. So like, okay, that's fine. No change when the frequency's on it. Keeps it healthy. And then what they wanted to find out is if we remove the DNA from the tube and just have an empty tube there, nothing should be happening. A sterile water, sterile test tube. If we apply the frequency to it in this test, we hypothesize that nothing should happen because nothing exists. But what they found is that the molecules for DNA and for life started to naturally develop in the water that was being inundated with the Schumann resonance. So,
well, this explains the creation of the world.
Well, it explains the creation of the world. It explains why there's great health in us being outside in nature and when I say grounding us, it moves us in a state towards what people find in deep meditation. So the article said that the Schumann resonance sits in the alpha state. So the alpha wavelength for the brain is one that's a state of alertness. Gamma is heightened alertness, where you're on it with everything.
Right, fight or flight.
Yeah, it's like super conscious state. But what you find is that the alpha state sits from like 9 to 14 hertz, but the Schumann resonance is set 7.83. So the article was wrong in actually saying that it applies to the alpha state. It really applies to the theta wavelength in the brain. And in the theta wavelength, that's where the 7.83 sits. It sits right in between that medium. That is the state that people achieve during deep meditation, when the body becomes completely equalized, peaceful, when the stream of conscious thoughts slows down and people enter that thought void state that we talked about, and allows them to be one in that moment with the environment and themselves.
So this is interesting, and I want people to understand this. So by not staying inside, not being in your car, not being in your office, not being in your home, because a lot of people just live inside constantly.
Yes.
But by going outside and going into a forest, here we have desert regions, but we have forests too, in the mountains.
Right.
Going into the water, whether it's a lake or an ocean, experiencing these different types of, how would you call it? What would you call it in a spiritual realm? Like, not just environments, but.
No, I would talk about the different frequencies of life.
Yes.
Right. So the plants and everything emit their own frequencies, but they live in the greater macro frequency of the Schumann resonance on this earth. So like when you look at a computer screen, it emits blue light, and they say that agitates you, prevents you from sleeping. Well, it's emitting something at a specific frequency. So all of your electronic devices, the material in your home that it's made out of, this inorganic material, it's emitting all these other frequencies that are interacting with a greater macro frequency. And it's crashing into what your genetic frequency, the 7.83, is trying to live in. So you have these disturbances in this life and these walls and these devices that we live with. So by removing yourself from them and putting yourself in the frequency of nature helps ground the body and almost enliven, the the biorhythms that the body naturally has. It allows the body to move back into its natural state of life, right? And growth and evolution. The tree lives in that all the time. But if you look at trees in cities, they're not very healthy, especially the ones that you see in sidewalks.
Right.
There's the life lacks there, and they're inundated with all these other frequencies that are upsetting the biorhythms of that plant itself. You're but a plant, you're a meat suit, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
We have cells just like the tree has cells. So we want to make sure that they're not interrupted with resonances that are harmful to us, right? We want those, like a test tube, we want more of those molecules of DNA and life to be there.
Yeah, I did for experiment, because they have a bunch of these on YouTube, the 7.83. I just put it on and just had it in the background while I was working.
Yeah.
Last night. It was very interesting. I mean, obviously we see with these studies that it worked. So that would be an idea. That would be another way, where you're at work or something like that. You could just put this frequency on, and then it'll allow it to, to work within itself. But here's what I thought that was interesting, and I kind of want to take this a step farther with you. This DNA was created off of this frequency in this test tube. Yeah. So what does that mean for us as individuals with the power that we have to be able to create?
Okay, that's an interesting question, and it's going to take a couple steps of the mind here to understand this. And I'll give some historical context from the Vedic scripts over in India. They got some things right. And the first part is that they said in the universe for its creation, there was sound before form. So there was a frequency, a resonance, which they call Om, the primordial sound, before something material, coarse material, actually developed. So there had to be a frequency where things would match and would allow some sort of bond at the atomic and subatomic level for these particles to come together and actually create an element. All elements sit at different frequencies.
Yes.
So when you get the right frequency, it allows a bonding of certain things to happen. So it's essentially creating material. It's creating life with that form. So when you ask about the creation of what we're doing, your thoughts have a vibrational pattern. Everything you do has that vibrational pattern. So if you're looking for that power to create new life within yourself, whether it be genetic material, that's going to start with the internal thoughts that you have, because those sit at a specific frequency through your consciousness, and also how you move this material body within its environment. So if you put yourself in environments that are conducive to peace, equalizedness, a theta wave state, a state of deep meditation, those are the things that are conducive to life actually springing up. It's not like the universe is just like the most chaotic thing, like every single star is blowing up every other second, just everything in its mother's getting sucked into black holes, planets are crashing into weather. Everything's relatively stable. There's a relative equalizedness between gravities and the way things shift and move, and the peace and the pace.
What is above, so below.
Yeah, as above, so below. That's exactly correct. Hermes Trismegistus.
Right.
And later adopted by the Greeks and like all that other good stuff. But when you ask about us having the power to do that sort of creation within ourselves, it's there. It's just allowing the availability of that to move through. But we block it with our environment and our choices and our thoughts. So having thoughts that are equalized, using tools like meditation to get into a deep meditative state, and putting yourself out in nature, afford your body the opportunity to take down that creational energy of that resonance and put it inside of you, so that it allows your cells and your DNA to thrive, to maintain their youth, right? To maintain that elasticity. Because stress causes, and they've shown this in studies, stress causes the DNA, the helix, to actually become very tight, restricted. It becomes very rigid. So it easily breaks. It doesn't have the elasticity or the malleability that it's supposed to have when you're in a relaxed, equalized, positive, neutral, state that is, conducive for life. And then it becomes loose, and then things can actually, it's almost like you become flexible with nature. Instead of fighting it and fighting yourself, you find that flexibility at a micro level and a macro level.
So when you're speaking of creation, and you're speaking of meditation, and we just did an episode on meditation, so I don't want to get into that too heavily. But what I want to get into is people understanding this veil that, and you use that word, this veil that we're experiencing now, and then the potential power that we have. Because I mean, every cell in our body gets changed. What is it? Every 7 years, 9 years, something like that.
Right. We have like a total body change that happens in cycles every 7 years.
Yeah. So when you think about that, and you have, I mean, if you meditated for 7 years, what would your body look like?
Oh, yeah. Not even your body. I mean, what would your thought patterns look like?
Yes, exactly.
The body is secondary to the thought pattern. So if I'm meditating for 7 years, the quality of my conscious thoughts, the amount of peace I have, probably have less wrinkles in my face and less gray hair. I don't know it. I don't know it's akin to gray hair. I don't know what causes it. That's out of my realm. I'm not a hair specialist, but you're going to be
healthier.
You're going to be healthier in mind and in body.
I mean, and it's as simple, and I want people to understand this. It's simple. You take people that have extreme worry. They've already proven that you get cancer off of worry. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's scientifically proven.
It's oxidative stress.
Right.
And when you oxidate a cell, you prevent it from breathing properly. So it causes your cells to ferment. And when that fermentation gets out of control, it becomes cancerous. So you have a cancerous fermentation. These things just start to grow inside of you.
Yeah, so people that have fear, guilt, worry, all these things, where everybody's always like, I got to get rid of these things. I got to get rid of these. So then you're putting more worry. Then you put a religious dogma system on top of that.
Which is
now you've got more fear, guilt, worry.
Yeah, I got just deeper anxieties because I'm associating myself with this false I.
Yes.
It's not truly who I am because I never did the self-reflection. So when you do that meditation, when you move into the theta state of deep meditation, you're moving into a state of resonance with the planet. You're becoming one truly with the waveform that the planet and life actually lives at.
And that's what is the ultimate goal.
That is the ultimate goal because that shows you're co-living, your coexistence with the thing that actually gives you life rather than beating it up and abusing it and not really valuing it for what it is.
Yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were talking to someone that said that somebody had passed away. Mm-hmm. And this person said, I'm jealous. And they're like, what? Like, you're jealous? He's like, yeah, they're at one with the universe. So it's almost like death is so, and we're going to do a whole episode on death and suicide. But
why do people think that, when death and the person crosses over and, not the person, but the spirit and the consciousness block moves over into the spirit realm?
Why it's so bad?
Why is it so bad? And why is it that you can't also pull in that energy that you think you can only be received in the death state?
Yes.
What's with that? What's the thought that you have to die first before you can experience the pleasures of a spiritual connection with creation?
Right.
You can do that right now.
Right.
Stop wasting your time. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no.
And a simple thing is, I mean,
go outside.
Yeah, go outside. And if you're stuck underground in a cave, I'm sorry, but get a machine that turns on the Schumann Resonance.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I wanted to bring this up because I want people to understand, especially now. I know governments, plural, are telling people to stay inside, wear your mask, all that, and we're saying be social distance, be practical about it, but get outside.
Yeah, get outside. The energy of your house and and the shapes within the house, the architecture is all wrong. When's the last time you saw a tree that was square?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't.
Right.
The energy of the tree is a helix pattern, especially with how it moves its water. It's in a twisting nature. Like that's how things move.
Right.
They're conical, circular.
And if we have vibration and energy, which is scientifically proven, then you have to have conduits of that energy.
Yeah, and it's spin. It's essentially spin at that atomic level. Well, there's no spin in a room that is square. I can spin in my mind, but essentially the energy and the resonances in this room are slamming into walls.
I do know something that's square that's amazing. SpongeBob.
He's
perfectly square.
The magic conch shell. What should we do now? Do nothing. Oh, okay, perfect.
That's beautiful spiritual teaching right there.
Yeah, do nothing.
What should we do? What should we do? What should we do?
And then this is a good metaphor. And when they did nothing, there's a plane flying over, and the guy's screaming because it's too heavy. He says, "We got to drop the load."
Right.
And as they're sitting there doing nothing, a fire falls out of a plane, perfectly lit, umbrella, food table, everything.
Yes.
So the abundance of life
comes
to you when you move into that state of peace, of just being there and living in that moment, not thinking. They literally had no thoughts. They made the characters in SpongeBob, their eyeballs it was dead behind the eyes.
Yes.
There was no thought, nothing. They were just sitting there and just living.
Yes.
In some sort of, like they were in a vegetative state, but the state of, awakened consciousness, like moving into that deep meditation, that theta state. I don't think SpongeBob was there.
Well, it's like they've talked to people that have been in a coma. And it's so interesting when you look at that, even though we may look at them and they're like, this is almost no life form, but yet this thought process and, You know, their mind was moving.
Yeah.
Some people can say, you know, I could hear everything. I could see everything.
The consciousness is still going, but the body's in a vegetative state.
Right.
You know, but there's still, you know, the spirit is still powering the consciousness.
But I always see it's like reverse coma with people that are just surviving.
Reverse
in
coma.
fear and flight. It's just like, you know, our bodies are moving, but our mind is just in a vegetative state.
You know what a reverse coma reminds me of? If like when I'm in New York City, you know, or Boston, and I watch people walking around the streets, you know, going to work, doing the same thing day in and day out, they're sleepwalking. They're awake, but they're going through these repetitious patterns, and they're not really thinking about themselves, you know, the environment, their effect on the environment, their thoughts that are affecting themselves. If they're in a constant state of slumber, you know, somnambulous, they're sleepwalking. And that is not what life is.
No, life is to be meant to be lived free.
And think about like the energy of a city. It's all square buildings.
Yes.
And from
the
an
grid
architect,
is even, we're going to be talking about that. There's an article that I'm going to send you a paper about, you know, how the cities were all put up. It's so interesting to find out. It's like, why are...
Oh, yeah, like, why did... what do you call
I mean, they're designed for efficiency.
Yeah,
and to have a group, a certain amount of people live in a very
they're designed
stable,
for the
logical
efficiency of
hamsters.
Industrial, yeah, they're designed for the efficiency of you know, government-owned resources to operate.
Septic systems, water systems.
It's not, infrastructure.
Right.
It's not designed for the efficiency and quality of life of the human being.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
They just think we can live around it.
Right.
And that's how cities are designed, and, you know, that's how we design our homes. But the real crux of this entire thing is, you know, move yourself into that state of Schumann resonance and begin to feel that life.
Yes.
Okay? Get out of that sleepwalking that you're in and recognize, you know, have that law of interaction between you and resonance, you and the planet, and you and yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. 7.83, baby.
7.83. Crank it on, guys.